It's Players' Cup time. Let's see if we can't get some wins with Dragapult VMAX. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sableyes, and here we have my first round of the Players' Cup Oceania Invitational, whatever we want to call it. I am playing Dragapult VMAX as we featured in our most recent Dragapult deck profile, and I'm actually going up against another player playing Dragapult VMAX here. So we've got a big mirror, Noble501. He's a streamer over on twitch.tv/Noble_501. So if you want to check him out, feel free to do so. This matchup is always really important. Getting that coin flip is super strong, and the fact that he's able to go first here means that he's in a really good spot. So he'd be super happy. He's got a Jirachi in the active and an energy attached to Dragapult. For me, I just want to make sure that I get an attachment to Dragapult. The thing that sucks about this is that it is best of 3, so just because he won the coin flip doesn't mean that he necessarily gets to go on to win the game, which can sometimes happen when you do get the first attachment. But my turn now. After Noble has done effectively nothing, I acrobike here into double Dragapult VMAX, which is very awkward, and then I actually make a bit of a mistake this turn in playing down the Dragapult V that's in my hand. What I should do is just attach to the Dragapult and then move on, because I know that he's not going to be able to take a knockout on my Dragapult. I also then Marnie those 2 Dragapult VMAXs to the bottom of the deck. So trying to stop my opponent here from getting what he needs to get. What I could have done is I could have just passed that turn where I was and moved on from there, but it's not going to happen now. One of the good things is, though, I do manage to find the Mr. Mime and put 10 damage onto Jirachi, so now Super Scoop Up is not out for this Jirachi to return to the bench. So that's good, but obviously the escape board does come down here. We actually Marnied Noble into a pretty perfect hand. He has the Scoop Up Net, which he discards with the treasure to find the Dragapult VMAX, and from memory he actually has a supporter in hand as well, so I think we're going to see a Marnie here. So I'm hoping, okay, well, I've just been Marnied from a 3-card hand. That's okay. As long as I get a decent hand, I should be fine. This is acceptable. Noble manages to find the extra energy and also a power plant, so Dedenne now isn't an option for me, so that's a bit of an issue. The good thing for us here is that we are going to be able to get an attack off of some description next turn. It just depends whether we're going to be looking at the VMAX attack or whether it's going to just be that first attack for Bite or even Jet Assault. It's not a great position to be in for us, especially when we played down that Dragapult V. We probably didn't have to do that, but that's okay. You live and you learn in these kind of situations. 130 damage to the Dragapult V and 50 onto the V on the bench. So we've got ourselves a pretty awkward situation already. Noble in a pretty strong spot. The thing about the Dragapult Mirror is that you normally are going to take your 3 prizes from just VMAXs. So it's not great that I've got damage on Jirachi and the Mr. Mime down as such. Obviously that Jirachi is going to be stuck on the field, but with an escape board it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to be in a bit of trouble here. I attach to the active. I'm going, okay, well, I need to continue to attack. I need to put the pressure on with Max Phantom if I'm going to get a chance to win this game. So I need to make sure that I use all this stuff. I put the escape board on the bench Dragapult because that's probably where I need to have it the most. And there we do find the VMAX. So I am going to be able to get the Max Phantom off here, but I'm in a pretty scary position because there's going to be an extra 50 damage onto the Dragapult V on the bench, which is really awkward. And we also have a Dragapult VMAX with 160 damage on it, 130 damage, sorry, 260 at the end of next turn, and that's not including any Zigzagoons that might be played down. Now, from this position, one of the things that a Dragapult VMAX player probably wants to do is they want to set it up so that the Dragapult VMAX is only 50 HP away from getting knocked out. Now, Noble is going to be able to put 130 onto me here, so they'll go to 260. And if he's able to put an extra damage counter of any kind, whether it's from Zigzagoon or Giratina, I think Noble only played the Zigzagoon, so if he can find the Zigzagoon to put 10 on it, then that's actually really good for him, because what that means is he's going to be able to gust out our other Dragapult VMAX and put 50 onto the VMAX on the bench and knock it out. So he's actually playing really strongly here. I'm about a turn behind. As you can see, I've managed to get 130 onto the active Dragapult and 50 onto the bench. He finds the Zigzagoon and then hits me with another Marnie. So now I'm in a bit of trouble. I need to find Energy and a VMAX. So I managed to find the basic Psychic, which is good. I would probably prefer to see the Horror Energy if I knew if I didn't know that the Giratina was there. But obviously Giratina is a bit of a problem as well. But yeah, we're in a very interesting spot now. It kind of sucks, frankly, because we are going to find it very, very difficult to get ourselves into a winning position this game. We almost have to hope that our opponent misses attachments. At the moment, he hasn't attached to the benched VMAX, so that is good. We could potentially find ourselves in a decent position if we can get an attack off this turn coming from our next Dragapult VMAX. We actually find the VMAX off the top deck there, which is really big, and we play the research. So maybe it's not too bad, but we are still that turn behind, which is always awkward. Now, the Dedenne, not super good in this matchup, even if the power plant wasn't down, because we don't want to give our opponent access to free prizes, which Dedenne effectively is. We're just going to hit into this Dragapult V here and hope that our opponent can't gust us. Now, they aren't going to be able to scoop up that Jirachi, so there's not going to be any retreat shenanigans happening. It's all going to be down to whether or not they have a boss in hand. And if they do, they probably go on to win this game. If they don't, we might have ourselves a chance, but it does depend on what our opponent has access to. The good thing is we have a Dragapult VMAX with an energy attached to it, so that is a massive positive. If Noble plays down a Psychic Horror Energy on the Dragapult VMAX on the bench, then we could potentially win the game by removing that energy with Giratina. But it's not super great, especially if we keep getting Marnied like this. It's very, very awkward. The best thing about that Marnie, though, is that there was no boss, so he's not going to be able to get a super, super easy knockout here. But the Dragapult VMAX on the bench is going to be on about, what, 170 damage with that Zigzagoon tick. Make that 180 damage with the Zigzagoon tick. So it's very, very bad, especially if our opponent finds an energy. A basic energy would pretty much do the game here. Now, we managed to get the Horror Psychic for our opponent, so there is potential, but it is going to be very, very difficult to kind of get that to work. We need boss and a Giratina here. Now, what we need to do is find a Jirachi. I think that's the simplest thing to do. Find a Jirachi, and we might be able to get there, but I don't think it's going to happen. We Acro Bike, we find Mysterious Treasure or Marnie. At this point, I think our best chance to win is hoping that our opponent doesn't have access to that extra energy. So we'll try our best here. But at the moment, we are probably in a bit of a losing position. We'll set up those extra ticks, though. Now, if he does miss the energy, then we are in a position where we could potentially win the game. There's the Giratina, which is really unfortunate. We actually find Reset Stamp as well, which is very, very good, giving us a chance to maybe win if he can't find an energy. Attached to the Dragapult VMAX in the active. Good thing is that that's a basic energy in this matchup. Noble, I think, actually was playing 6 basic Psychic and 3 Horrors, which is kind of a little bit different to your traditional list, for this reason exactly, so that he's not going to get those energies discarded as much. We're in a weird spot. We're going to have to reset stamp and hope that our opponent doesn't have access to energy, but the problem is that we probably can't kill the Jirachi and expect to win the game by knocking out the Dragapult VMAX, because there's going to be, what, 50 more damage on there? 170. We need it to be on about 190 damage, and we've already used quite a few Scoop Up Nets. We've got the Zigzagoon in hand, but if we were going to knock out the Jirachi to try and save this turn, then we'd need to use the Jirachi, the Zigzagoon on the Jirachi to get the knockout. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to hit into him. We're going to hope for the very best. Hope that we can manage to avoid an energy from our opponent, but at this stage, I'm thinking, okay, it's probably just about time to get going for game 2. There's probably a couple of things we could have done there, maybe picking up the Zigzagoon, kind of putting down a Zigzagoon tick onto their Zigzagoon. That could have potentially been a good idea. But yeah, we're in a bit of an awkward spot now. They've got the energy, which is good. They need one more tick from a Zigzagoon, and they've got Research and Stellar Wish to go for it. There it is. So they'll take game 1, which is expected, frankly, when you lose the coin flip. So a disappointing way to start, but not unexpected. And we do go into games 2 and 3, firstly having learnt a lot of information, and secondly feeling a lot more comfortable that we're going to start in game 2. So you'll see here us go through the process. Actually, maybe we won't. Maybe I'll cut this bit out. Alright, game 2 time. See if we can't manage to bring this one back. Obviously going first is going to be a big deal for us. If we find Dragapult and Energy, then we'll be fine. And the best thing about this particular set is that I'm not going to make the same mistake again where I place down that extra Dragapult V. We just didn't need to do it. So we'll see how this one goes. We've managed to get a pretty decent start again. We've got no supporter, which is frustrating, but we've got a chance to draw into some more cards, and we have both basic and horror energy. So depending on what our opponent puts down, we've got a really good chance here to go for broke. Now we've got a Zigzagoon in hand. We could potentially put this tick down now. There's a couple of ticks that we might go for, especially since we know our opponent is playing Marnie. It could be a very frustrating Marnie if that does happen, but, you know, it's okay. We've got a pretty settled hand. We've got Mysterious Treasure and Dragapult if we get to keep the hand, but no, Marnie comes down. Probably should have expected that one, to be honest. And now we are into a hand that is much less good, although our opponent does only have the one energy, so... not the one energy, the horror energy. So we can potentially give ourselves a chance here. Now this is a gamble. I grabbed the Marnie here instead of the Dedenne. I'm thinking, okay, well I'd really like to go on to win this game, preferably. And the way that I win this game is by actually attacking into the active with an attack whilst they don't have any energy. Now I've guaranteed everything here. I think I just had the chance to get the money to go for the Giratina off the money before. I'm thinking this is fine, and I managed to find myself a VMAX as well. So this is fantastic for me. I hit for the Max Phantom. I don't get to put any damage onto the bench, which kind of sucks, but it's not the end of the world. Most of it is wasted unless it's on a Dragapult V anyway. But this is really, really strong because now I'm attacking with a VMAX whilst my opponent can't really do anything about it. And goes into the Jirachi here. Kind of happy to give away some free prizes in a Malamar, not a Malamar, a Dragapult Mirror, just because you know that your opponent is going to need to take 2 VMAX knockouts. And they chuck down another Dragapult here and then research, so they had a pretty good hand, but they don't have energy, which is a very, very big deal. It's a big problem for them. And I've also put 130 onto that Dragapult V on the bench, so that is ready to be knocked out at some point. The VMAX can also be knocked out as well. Now, my opponent grabs a Marnie here off of the Jirachi. And now they've already played a supporter, so they're not going to be playing that Marnie. Means that I know that they've got it in hand, so I can probably try and set myself up a little bit. You see the super scoop ups coming down here. They're placing lots of damage counters onto my Dragapult VMAX. 50 is a pretty solid number to have on there, but they would much prefer it if they were attacking this turn. They're very, very far behind, actually, now that they've not been able to do any of that. They actually discard an energy for me, get rid of the Horror Psychic, so they must have had something pretty good off of that Acro Bike. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty solid. Even if I have to knock out this Jirachi, I can place some damage counters onto the Zigzagoon so it can't be scooped back up. I can place more damage counters onto the Dragapult V that's damaged, or I can potentially get some damage onto the benched Dragapult V as well. Now I've got a quick ball here and a couple of energy that I'm about to discard, so now's the time to grab out the Dragapult V. I think it's not great, it's not ideal, but I don't want to be losing all of these energy, so I will put that down. I find the VMAX as well, which is pretty good, and a Shrine. Shrine's not super useful now, but if they do play Dedenne down, we could potentially make some use of it, especially since their only way of replacing it is by playing down Power Plant, so they wouldn't be able to replace the Stadium and then Dedenne. But at the moment, I think the biggest thing, the most important thing for me is that I just put some more damage down, and I especially want damage onto that Dragapult V with the energy, because that's the biggest threat. That's the one that needs to be taken out. Now, I could use the Zigzagoon play here, or again, I could just go for the Max Phantom. The Max Phantom seems very safe, but obviously my opponent does have Marnie. What I'll do is I'll play the Escape Board down onto the Dragapult, and then I'll play down this Zigzagoon. We'll start stacking some counters on. So I'm going to put them onto the V with a bunch of damage on it already. The reason that I'm doing that is I want to disincentivize my opponent from putting that, evolving that Dragapult V. Right, so if at any point I manage to find Boss and knock that Dragapult V out, my opponent doesn't really care. But if they put it into a VMAX, then I can potentially give myself a chance to win this game. Now, I put it on, what, 200 here, 190, and then 10 onto the benched one. This is really, really big. Okay, this is super, super big for me because now I can potentially knock out that Dragapult VMAX if it does come up. If it doesn't, that's fine. I can just knock it out next turn and go down to 3 prizes remaining, or I can force my opponent to find that VMAX to evolve it. It would have been great to have knocked it out that turn, because that would have been just infinitely better than having all of this stuff in my hand, but I didn't have the Scoop Up Net, so I couldn't quite get it there. We managed to find the Scoop Up Net off of the prizes, as you usually do in these kind of matchups, but that's fine because they're going to have to put this VMAX down, or otherwise it's knocked out anyway, and that's very, very awkward for them. If they do have to put down a Horror Psychic Energy onto the active as well, I'm in a really strong spot there too, because if they have to put down the Horror Psychic, then I can scoop up the Giratina and replace them. Replace it. I'm really struggling here, which is fine. But it's obviously a big problem for my opponent. They managed to get the Scoop Up Net and the basic energy, so they're in a pretty solid spot. They're going to tick that damage over onto the active, and then we'll see how we go. I actually have Boss here, which is a pretty interesting card. Now, I was debating, is it worth bringing up one of these benched Pokemon and trying to take a knockout? Ultimately, no, I don't think so, because my key objective here is to make sure that I knock out the active, and in this moment, I'm in a really good spot to do it. In fact, what I can do now is I can take a knockout on the benched Dragapult V, whilst putting pressure on the active Dragapult as well. So, I'm not super worried about that. What I do need to do is I need to find another Dragapult VMAX. So, I might be looking at a research here. I don't want to put down the Jirachi, though. I don't want to give my opponent a ton of different prizes to take. I'm thinking that it's probably best to just research here. We don't really need them. I did think about it for a second. I was like, do I put the Jirachi down? In the end, choosing not to. I find the VMAX, I get a Scoop Up Net, and I get Zigzagoon, which is really, really big. Means that I'm going to be able to do quite a lot here, including stop my opponent from scooping up the Zigzagoon on their bench. Which is obviously a big deal for me. I want to stop them from being able to take big knockouts on my Pokemon. Now, the Dragapult VMAX that we have in the active is knocked out next turn, so that is a bit of a problem for us, but we've got a Dragapult VMAX on the bench ready to go, and we'll be in a position where we can probably get a knockout on something at some point in the future. Just having a think here, is it worth playing down this Shrine of Punishment? Probably is. Again, it'll disincentivize them to play down Power Plant, because they wanted to use Dedenne, but if they use Dedenne, then the Shrine works, so probably not a bad idea. And I'm also thinking about the Zigzagoon Snipe here. We're just going to chuck them down onto the active, because we are going to need quite a few ticks on this Dragapult VMAX to get the knockout. And we're going to put it on 160 here. 160 plus 130 is 290. We actually need 3 more ticks, which is going to be just a little bit out of reach. But if they do attack into a Dragapult VMAX with a Horror Energy, which is obviously on our bench, then we could potentially go for it. Now, I placed down 2 counters onto the Zigzagoon on the bench. That's 1, stopping it from being scooped up, and 2, putting it in range of being knocked out if our opponent plays something else down. I put 10 damage onto the Dragapult V because it's not wasted there, and my opponent has 160 damage on it. Now, I know my opponent is playing Mallow and Lana, and I am terrified of Mallow and Lana in this matchup. Obviously, it is a big, big card. And playing research there is a big deal for me. I really like the fact that that happened, because it means that I'm likely going to be able to get myself a knockout if I can create a solid situation here. And if they search out the Mallow and Lana, then I've got the Marnie for next turn. We should be able to get ourselves going just a little bit. So, we'll see. But at the moment, like I said, I'm feeling pretty comfortable. They're about to take a knockout, which does suck, but we will put our opponent on 290 damage, which is well within range of winning this game. We'll see whether or not we can make this work. And we're just waiting on our opponent here to max Phantom. They're going to knock out the active and then obviously place the 50 damage onto the benched Dragapult. Now, again, good thing we've got that 20 damage on the Zigzagoon, because the Scoop Up Net on that Zigzagoon is now gone. They cannot use it. So we are in a really strong spot. We know that there's a Giratina in our opponent's hand, plus they've just taken 3 prizes. So I'm thinking that Marnie is a pretty good call here, and I'm also thinking that we attach the Horror Psychic to the active, because that's probably going to disincentivize them attacking into us, especially since the Dragapult, no, not the Dragapult, the what do you call it? The Giratina is going to be in the bottom of the deck. So there's a pretty good chance that we are going to stop our opponent from getting into that there. There's the Mr. Mime. So all this time I've been talking about not being able to scoop up the Zigzagoon. They've actually been able to do it, but, you know, whatever. And then we find the reset stamp as well. I'd go for it here. I might not need to. Probably could save it for next turn, but I don't want to give our opponent a chance. So what I'll do is I'll stamp them down and then attack into them for 130 damage. And at this point in the game, I'm thinking that we are in a really good spot. The only thing that can happen to stop us from winning is our opponent having access to Mallow and Lana. So if they have Mallow and Lana, then they can probably go on to win the game. But if they don't, then we should be A-okay. And that's the key, right? The tech is always a very interesting one. They can tech in the Mallow and Lana, but not being able to search for it, and it taking up a bench space can sometimes make the deck slightly less kind of powerful, I guess you could say. Slightly less consistent. They've also got the Shadowbox Mimikyu in there as well. That's obviously going to stop Mewtwo's and such, but it's not particularly useful here. So there's a couple of cards that our opponent is playing that aren't really useful in this matchup or are difficult to find. And the fact that they played the research there means that, yes, no matter what our opponent does, we should be able to go on this to win this game. Even if they Giratina and then Super Scoop Up and then Giratina again, we have the energy in hand. We should be okay to go on to win. It's just a matter of whether or not we can manage it. Now they're going for the Dedenne. They know this is it's make or break time. We have to remove this energy. We have to remove it. We have to hope that our opponent doesn't have energy to attach. And if they don't, then we could potentially win the game. And I mean, I'm kind of worried. If I get reset stamp, which just happens here, and they scoop up and knock out, remove my other energy, then it is a bit of a concern, but we do draw into the energy here anyway. So it's okay. It's not the end of the world for us. We're super happy to see energy in our hand, but the fact that they've attacked into us without having removed that second horror is a big deal anyway. Now we're going to be able to go on to win the game. We are going to go 1-1, and hopefully we can win in Game 3. We will, though, have to win going second, which is very, very tough to do as Dragapult. So hopefully we can get a little bit of luck. Maybe our opponent has a bit of a rough start, can't find energy or something like that. We'll see how it goes. I'll see you in just a second. All right, Game 3 time. Hopefully we can get ourselves a solid one. Obviously, going into Game 3, we are going to be going second. That's a lot of goings in one sentence, but that's okay. We'll see how we go. If we can eventually force our opponent to miss energy attachment and get in front on those attachments, we should be okay. But giving our opponent an extra card off of a mulligan is not a good thing. Yeah, that's very, very awkward to say the very least. This hand, on the other hand, is very good. We have Jirachi, we've got a Zigzagoon, we've got a Dragapult, an attachment, and Mr. Mime, so we can create some kind of interesting situations. If we don't get Marnied, we've got the Dragapult VMAX. We do need to find a supporter, but Mimikyu in the active for our opponent. That's a big deal for us. That means that we can potentially score ourselves a free prize, because that's the type of card that our opponent doesn't want to have on the field. So if they don't scoop it up, we might have ourselves a chance to take a free prize. Like I was saying earlier, though, you are probably looking to get the attacks into the Dragapults instead of those one prizes, but they put down a Zigzagoon, they put down a Jirachi, we could potentially get there. So we'll see how we go. They've got the Dragapult, they've obviously got an energy because they discarded one already. And that's a pretty solid turn. It means that the Mimikyu stays in play, which I'm a big fan of. What we're going to do is we're going to grab an energy with the spinner, we'll attach that to the Dragapult. I think we'll actually use the Zigzagoon, as much as I don't want to. Or I was about to say, I think we'll actually use the Zigzagoon on the Mimikyu, but if we can find ourselves an attack into that Mimikyu, I'll be really happy. In fact, we should probably place the damage onto the Dragapult V, but it's just whether or not we think we're going to get Marnied, whether we are going to Marnie into a switching effect or not. If we think we're going to get one, which we are likely to get, to be fair, then it's probably best to put it onto the bench. But if we miss the switch now, then that Mimikyu could potentially go. Now, we have managed to find it, which is good, but the risk here is that we are potentially going to be taking the full brunt of a Dragapult GX attack next turn if we choose to go into the active. So we'll see. We'll see what the best move here is. I think it is smart, though, to keep this Mimikyu in play. Whether we do that by using the Zigzagoon or just retreating and attacking is another question. I think the attack is probably pretty good. It means that we can... Oh, sorry, not the attack. What am I talking about? Moving the Zigzagoon into the active is probably the way to go, because they can just knock that out. Here's me. I'm so excited. I can't remember what happens in my own games. But that's okay. It's fine. It's not a problem. They've got the attack here, so they're going to put 50 damage onto our Dragapult if they can switch. Since we didn't play the Zigzagoon down, they can just scoop it up. So if they do use the scoop up here, maybe what we did was a bit of a misplay. It depends, obviously, on a lot of factors. But they do have a pretty small hand at the moment, and we did Marnie them, so we could potentially get a pretty solid spot. There's a switch, so it didn't end up mattering, and they don't have a supporter. Okay, so we're in a spot now where we could potentially go on to win this game purely because our opponent doesn't have access to any cards. And this is the type of thing that we need to happen if we are going to win going second. We need to get a little bit lucky, and we might have just done that there. If our opponent has a supporter off of the prizes, then hey, it's whatever, you know, it's gonna happen eventually. But we've got ourselves a pretty solid hand. We can put the Zigzagoon down here. We can tick onto the active about 3 times, which is pretty solid, and then we'll be able to Professor's Research. We just need an Energy and the VMAX. If we can manage that, and our opponent misses a turn, then we could very easily go on to be in a strong spot in this game. So we'll research. We've got Energy and we've got the Mysterious Treasure, so we are in a really, really strong spot now. We can still use the Stellar Wish, obviously. Use that here. We'll grab the Marnie for next turn. I think that's probably not a bad idea. We've got a research already, but Marnie would be a good option just in case our opponent does get access to a supporter. We can attach an Energy. We're not going to put the Horror down because they might be able to get rid of it. And then we will grab ourselves the VMAX with the Mysterious Treasure. So we are in a really, really good spot here. As long as our opponent didn't get a supporter off of the prizes, then we should be probably in a position to win this game. But you never know. That can happen sometimes. We've used 2 Scoop Ups, so that's a little bit awkward. We'll see how it goes. We need another 2 Scoop Ups to take a knockout on this Dragapult VMAX. We've got one in hand. If our opponent finds themselves a Marnie, then that will be very, very awkward indeed. They've got a Quick Ball, so they might go for Dedenne here. And again, that's another big one. If they do go for Dedenne, then we are in a really strong spot because we can take those prizes. They actually go for the Dragapult and they do get a Marnie. That's probably the worst last card that they could have had, actually, but it's okay. We'll get to look at some other stuff here. They go for the Max Phantom. Alright, so we could potentially get ourselves a knockout on the VMAX in the active, but at this stage, as long as we get an attachment, I am happy. And that boss is actually pretty tempting as well. We might be able to use that at some point to hit into the Dragapult V that is on the bench, but I think the best thing to do at the moment is just to confirm it. We've got an Acrobike here. I kind of want to get another supporter, but the risk is discarding those energies is always very awkward. We've got a lot left in the deck. We've got none discarded, so I'll use that now. We'll see what happens. In hindsight, might be a bit of an error because we do need to make sure that we guarantee that attachment, and that's just an energy that we've thrown away. And now, having not found ourselves a supporter, we might need to play down Dedenne to try and win this game, and that for me is really bad. We might just need to pass, which, again, very, very awkward. Our opponent doesn't have Zigzagoon on the bench, so there's no guarantee that they have it, but now we're in a very, very awkward spot where we don't have the energy for Dragapult, and if they do manage to get themselves an energy, then they're back in front. So again, a bit of a bad play there. I think now we need to take the risk and get ourselves a Dedenne, because if we don't get that attachment, then we lose all of the benefits that we've had from being in front. So this is a bit of a bad play here, but we're gonna have to do it. I think getting this Dragapult V is probably a misplay as well, but I'm not thinking straight in the moment. I'm just disappointed that I didn't get the energy that I wanted after throwing it away. What I should have done is got the Dragapult VMAX. If I'm going to discard the last Dragapult, then I may as well get the VMAX, because that means that a Quick Ball can thin the deck some more. That's okay. We move on from these. As long as we get an energy off the Dedenne, we'll be fine. We managed to find one, and we also get a research here, which is pretty big. So I might attach the Escape Board to the active. No, we'll take it to the bench because the active Pokemon might get knocked out this turn, and then we can research and fill our hand up with a bunch of stuff. Now, we've got the reset stamp for next turn, which is really big because we can potentially stamp our opponent down to 2 cards, and that might be the way that we go on to win this game. If we do manage to get our opponent to dead draw for another turn, I think we can manage it. The problem is we don't have boss in our hands right now, so that could be a bit of a problem. I'm not too stressed, to be honest. As long as we do this, take this knockout on the Dragapult VMAX, we should be a-okay. So now our opponent playing Switch here, getting that Dragapult V out of the active. I'm very worried about that Mallow and Lana, but again, they don't have it. They discard boss, they discard another research, so I'm feeling pretty good. They actually got rid of quite a few of their draw supporters here. They do find the Zigzagoon though, which is very upsetting, and they've got an energy. Okay, so that's a horror energy. This is a big turn here. If we can manage to find ourselves a gust and an energy, then we can potentially lock our opponent out of this game, because our opponent theoretically is going to retreat into that 300 HP damaged Dragapult, because they don't want me to get the value out of my ticks. They'll go into that one and attack and take the knockout here. Probably plays 50 on the bench. That's fine. I don't mind that at all. Then I'm going to be able to gust up the Dragapult VMAX on the bench, get rid of its energy, and knock out the Dragapult VMAX in the active if I get lucky. And if I'm lucky, I probably end up winning this game. So we've got ourselves a really good shot here to try and win this mirror, which is a massive deal for us, a really, really big deal, because if we can do it, we are in a really, really strong spot to win. But because of the Dedenne, we might be in a bit of trouble if it doesn't work out. We absolutely have to get this to work. So we'll see how we go. We managed to find the energy off of the top here. This is big. What we'll do is I'll Mysterious Treasure, I'll get rid of a Marnie, I'll grab that Giratina. Again, probably should have grabbed the VMAX and discarded it, because this is me thinning to try and get cards out of my deck, and that's just bad. But we've got 11 cards and a Jirachi in the active. If we get the boss here, we probably win the game. And we found the boss. So what we can do is we can gust out that Dragapult VMAX, we can remove its only energy, we can take 3 prizes on the bench, and we can reset stamp our opponent as well. So this is a massive, massive turn. And if we need anything out of our deck, we've got Marnie and Research in hand for next turn to make sure that we get it. But I think this very easily could be the winning play. This could be the thing that means that I go through to the second round of winners bracket, because now our opponent is in such a difficult spot. They're going to have to find themselves a lot of stuff here to get them into a position where they can win, and they've only got 3 cards to work with. And if we manage to find a Scoop Up Net, then not only do we just effectively win the game, if we find the Scoop Up Net, then we just win, right? Because we can scoop up the Zigzagoon, put the Dragapult VMAX onto 190 HP, and then knock it out with our Max Phantom. So I think we're in a strong spot. I think we're going to end up going on to win this game, as long as this reset stamp doesn't completely screw us. Okay, that's not ideal, but it's okay. We've got ourselves an energy just in case something happens, and also a research. Our opponent's best route to victory, it's awkward because they have to attack with this Dragapult now that they've attached to it. Their best route is to, like, if their last card's like a boss, to just like boss the Dedenne and hope that we can't get out of it. But apart from that, at the moment, I think we're in a position where, as long as our Scoop Up Net is one of the cards that we have access to in this deck, we should be okay. And we'll be able to check for that with Quick Ball as well. So it's not all over. There's the boss, so they do have it. They'll be able to put 60 onto this Dedenne. So now we have ourselves a bit of a ticking clock. There's the VMAX that we should have been milling out of the deck earlier. We'll get rid of it now. We can grab ourselves a Dragapult. We have 2 Scoop Ups left. So all we need to do is attach this energy. I just double check here where the Horror Energy, I can attach it to the Dedenne. Just making sure, make sure that everything is right. We can research. As long as we hit Scoop Up Net, we win this game, and there's 2 of them here. So what we'll do is we'll retreat into the Dragapult VMAX. We've got the Scoop Up Net. We can get this Zigzagoon off of the bench. 1 tick onto the Dragapult VMAX. And then Max Phantom will be the knockout for game. That's a very, very tough matchup, especially when you're going second, so I'm very happy to get through in the first round, and hopefully round 2 can be a little bit easier, because Noble 501 played exceptionally well, and if not for that reset stamp at the end, probably would have ended up winning this one. So there you have it, victory in the first round of the Players' Cup. Thank you very much to Noble 501 for the games. They were actually really, really good ones, and they very easily could have gone either way, and good luck to him for the rest of the tournament. Thank you very much for coming along and taking a look at this one. If you've enjoyed it, then please consider subscribing. There's a button just here that you can click to guarantee that you'll see the rest of my tournament, however long it goes. And over here we've got some videos that YouTube thinks you'll like, as well as a playlist down the bottom of more of our deck profiles from Rebel Clash. Thank you everyone for coming along. Leave a like if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.